object in a very specific way, and then once it's done, then the demon loses the power. So, but anyway, but they can infest objects
Okay.
as well.
Uh, Father Ripperger, is yoga a portal to demonic obsession, possession?
Um, it is. This one's always one of
I
those.
know. I'm
It's
getting
sure
ready
the
for to hear the
chat's going to blow up on
screeches
this
to
one.
emerge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I want people to hear it because I don't want people to have oppression or obsession or possession in their life
That's yeah,
because they're
yeah.
partaking in a Hindu ritual.
That's exactly it. In fact, if you do, and I tell people, look, don't kill the messenger. I'm just the messenger. If you really want to research this stuff, don't go on the internet and type it, is this occult? Because you're going to get all sorts of what. You have to research the masters, the yoga masters, the people that are at the top of the heap. And every single one of them will say that the positions and motion and stretching that is done in yoga, each one of them is a representation of a specific Eastern deity, which is AKA a demon, right? Because all the gods of the Gentiles are demons. There was a guy who wrote it. I'm really kind of frustrated because he wrote the book, but he never published it. It was literally like 40 or 50 of the top yoga positions and which deities they actually referred to based upon these masters, yoga masters. Okay. So that being said, yes, people can become diabolically influenced. I do know 2 women who became possessed from practicing yoga. I know people who were possessed, and then by practicing yoga, they ended up with more demons. And so I just tell people you want to completely stay away from it altogether.
Yeah. Now there's this new Netflix special that people are talking about. It's in the live chat about Jeffrey Dahmer.
Mm-hmm.
People probably shouldn't even watch this stuff. It's probably bad. It's
Yeah.
Hollywood and all that. But I mean,
Right.
Jeffrey Dahmer is interesting. He was a homosexual who was just sort of obsessed with homosexuality and killing men and all that. I mean, have you ever
Right.
looked into that? I mean, it seems like this guy had to be possessed by a bunch of demons. He was like collecting skulls. And he was making like an altar in his house, and it's just a weird, weird thing.
Um, you know, there are certain psychological pathologies that can result in that. But when you listen to the darkness of it, and if you listen to him, I don't know if you ever saw that interview that he did like like a week before he died, before they executed him.
Mm.
He openly says the gateway is pornography. And he says, keep your kids away from the pornographies. And at this point,
Well, I think
it's
that
kind
was
of interesting.
Bundy, or was that Dahmer?
Was it Bundy?
It's one of
Okay.
them. I thought it was Bundy. Maybe I got it wrong. But yeah, he
Yeah.
says one of them says pornography is what got me.
Yeah. I for some reason I thought Dahmer did
Maybe it
too,
was
but
Dahmer.
it's one. Yeah, it's one of the two, or maybe even both of them, for all we know. But anyway, the point being is that it's the pornography, which means that there is any mortal sin is an open door to possession. Now, not everybody who commits a mortal sin becomes possessed, but it's an open door. And so these guys that get involved in that, and then they start going down the path of the stuff that's more and more disordered. The more disordered a thing is, the more likely is going to be the level of possession, or that you're likely to become possessed. And so I think these guys that repeatedly get involved in that type of thing, if they're not possessed, I'm just surprised. And I don't think that, I mean, you can argue that some of the that this could be explained all psychologically, maybe, but I think that the what caused it, the fact that it's something that's gravely morally disordered, and that it's mortally sinful, and the fact that it was something that consistent, and the darkness with which they talk about it, seems to me that an indicator that there were demons involved, at least on some level.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard. I don't know if this is right, but Dahmer was obsessed and would rewatch the film Exorcist 3, which I've never seen. I haven't even seen Exorcist 1. But he was obsessed with that film, which obviously has to do with demonic and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean the first Exorcist movie I have seen, and it's based on somewhat of a true story. There's stuff in it that is kind of silly and not accurate, and it's not how it works. But that all being said, in fact, the first time I watched the movie The Ride, I just was laughing through the whole thing because it was just so contrary to how things function and work on every single level. And then I did start watching The Exorcist 2, and it got so stupid and silly that I never even got to 3. So,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of those movies, I think the danger with those kinds of movies is that they can be purulent in the sense that people are watching them because they want the psychological thriller side of it. But those, if you're not careful, those can also open certain doors if it's disordered in some fashion.
Or
Um,
just a impure curiosity.
yes, exactly. So at least my impression was like with the movie Exorcism of Emily Rose, it's less that way. It seems to be more a bit of a storytelling, or it could be interpreted that way, I suppose. Um, but uh, but anyway, the yeah, I think that that's one of the real deep things that people have to be curious, the curiosity to curiosity, which is here we're not talking about the natural human beings in intellectual desire to know things. We're not talking about that. We're talking about pursuing knowledge that's not proper to your state in life, right? And so that type of curiosity in these matters, you don't need to watch these things to know how diabolic work. In fact, you're not going to find it. Sometimes people will say, well, you're reading Father Rutger's book on Dominion, and that's curiosity. Actually, if anything of the sort, as you started reading, Taylor, you know, I've stripped it of all of that. This is an academic exercise. This is not, you know, a reading through all the sensationalism and all that. It's just not that at all.
Yeah. You know, we're in October. Halloween is obviously Hallows Eve. It's the eve of a
Right.
holy day of obligation. It's very important. We're recognizing all the saints, but of course, a lot of wicked, evil things happen. What would be your pastoral advice as an exorcist to families and people as we observe All Saints Day on November 1st, All Souls
Mhm.
Day on November 2nd, and then, you know, with kids and neighborhoods and all that with Hallows Eve? What's your advice?
Um, I have a somewhat complex view of it. I know that certain people that have been involved in satanic activity have said you have to stay away from it altogether. Well, that sounds to me like the guy who had a problem with alcoholism, right?
Right.
You know, he's like, alcohol is evil, you got to stay away from it entirely. Well, no, you do, but the rest of us don't necessarily have to. Okay. So that being said, because we can moderate it, I think in relationship to this, obviously you do not want to get involved in the occult aspects of it. It doesn't mean, for example, that your kid can't dress up as some kind of a saint and you can't have an all saints party or things like that. Those can actually be beneficial. You just don't want to do things that are disordered. You know, you don't. Your kid doesn't want to dress up as Satan or something. You don't want that going on
Or a
because
murderer or Jason or Freddy Krueger. I mean, that's not
right,
wholesome.
exactly,
That's weird.
right. And I think that ultimately, if you do the, you know, they dress up. I think it's an important. I think it's a great thing that they actually dress up as some type of saint because it gets them the connection to the in the feast to the saints and the things of that sort. And so I think on that level, it's actually a good thing. You just have to make sure that what you're doing is not disordered.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, there's is kind of a, maybe it's the wrong way to say it, but a triduum of kind of All Saints Eve, All
Yeah,
Saints, and then, you know, November 2nd is All Souls Day. And, you know, we can get indulgences for the dead.
that's
So
right.
we need to do that. And I think it's wholesome to take our kids. We try to do it every year, at least once. We take them to the cemetery. And we're like,
Right.
why are the younger ones are like, why are we here, Dad? And I was like, there's dead people right down here below you. And they're like, there are? Yes, there's skeletons. There's hundreds of skeletons all around us. And they're like,
Right.
there is? Like, yeah, they're all dead. And some are in hell, and some are in purgatory, and some are in heaven. And the ones in purgatory need us to help them. So let's pray in our Father and explain it to
Exactly.
them. And then I tell them, one day you're going to be here.
That's right.
And it's just, maybe
I
people
think.
think that's morbid or macabre.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say that too, but quite frankly, I think it's extraordinarily psychologically healthy because it's real. It's reality. And this if you don't, you know, if you're not like, oh, they're going to get you type of nonsense, but if you actually say, no, this is these people need our help, like you said, it helps people to have a connection to the saints and to those in purgatory, which is something that is clearly lacking among the Protestants. Among the Protestants, you see this; they don't have that same kind of connection to their loved ones that have died, right? Because boom, they're gone, and that's it. There's no communication, there's no help, there's no nothing. Whereas with Catholics, it's quite frankly, I think it's more psychologically healthy to have that connection with them.
Yeah, and I think the solution is, okay, are we going to retreat to the Satanists and let them have October 13th? Because it's a Catholic feast day. It's kind of like saying, well, I'm upset about the commercialism around the 25th of December and the overemphasis on Santa Claus, so we're not celebrating the birth of Jesus anymore. Like
Yeah,
That's not a good perspective. That's called losing the culture war. What we
That's
should
right.
be doing as Catholics is defining what the day means. And Christmas is about the birth of Jesus, Christ Mass. And we shouldn't be running away from Halloween. We should be saying, no, it's Hallows Eve. Well, what's a Hallow? Hallow
Right.
is a saint. Like, hallowed
Right.
be thy name, holy. And we need to be
Right.
teaching our neighborhood that this is a Catholic feast day and not abandoning it. If I were a Protestant, I'd be like, yeah, forget Halloween. That's dumb. It's weird.
Yeah.
But if we're Catholic, we have to embrace the day. It's a day of obligation.
Yeah, the other thing I find kind of interesting too is that the more we've, I mean, I've been doing exorcism works for 15 years, and my lay assistant, he's been assisting for like 21 or 22 years, and the more